I'm 6 years old. Hi, I'm Zosha and I'm 8 years old.
Hi everyone, this is Mommy.
What's up everyone, I'm Daddy.
And you're listening to
It's Movie Night.
And this week we watched Rampage.
Warner Brothers released this video game adaptation in 2018. It's rated PG-13 and has a runtime of 1 hour and 47 minutes. Some other Movie Night picks the studio released around this time were Ready Player One and Teen Titans Go to the movies.
This movie is about a man named Davis who's best friends with a gorilla named George. One night, a lab experiment from space crash lands on Earth and emits a gas that mutates George, a wolf, and a crocodile, making them hostile and ferocious. Now it's up to Davis to stop these animals before they rip apart Chicago.
Various other parts of the country as well.
Yes.
Some familiar faces and voices. Davis Okoye is played by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who we've talked about before. He is the voice of Maui in Moana. He's the voice of Crypto in DC League of Super Pets. Bravestone in the Jumanji reboot movies. One of the earlier movies I remember seeing him in, other than Scorpion King, he played Joe Kingman in The Game Plan.
Lovely movie.
But some things parents might recognize him from is Bob Stone in Central Intelligence. Our girls watch this movie, but it might toy a line for some parents. And wrestling. If you watched anything from 1996 forward for Raw, SmackDown, any of that.
He just got back into it again.
Yeah.
So, yeah. He's been doing it for a long time.
He saw it go from WWF to WWE.
Yep.
Dr. Kate Caldwell is played by Naomi Harris. It took us a while to figure out who she was. She is Tia Dalma or Calypso in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies 2 and 3. She plays Frances Barrison or Shriek in Venom, Let There Be Carnage. But parents, you may recognize her as Selena from 28 Days Later. Claire Wyden is played by Malin Ackerman. She's in nothing kid-friendly, so parents, you may recognize her as Laurie Jupiter or Silk Spectre from Watchmen. She is also Ronnie in Couples Retreat, which I know is a movie we love.
A guilty pleasure for sure.
Such a guilty
It's not
pleasure.
a great movie, but we love it.
It's Vince Vaughn. It's entertaining. It makes you laugh.
Yeah.
Agent Harvey Russell is played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who is also in nothing kid-friendly, but he's very recognizable for parents. He is James Connor, the dad from Fall, John Winchester in the Supernatural series. He's Denny Duquette in Grey's Anatomy, and he's also in Watchmen as Edward Blake or the Comedian. Brett Wyden, a little bit more of a minor character, but it was just fun to recognize him. He is played by Jake Lacey, who is Pete or Plop in The Office.
Yeah, that was fun.
Burke is played by Joe Manganiello. He is in nothing really for kids. He plays Dick Ritchie in the Magic Mike films, so parents may recognize him as that. Otherwise, he's Sofia Vergara's ex-husband. That's what I mainly knew him as.
He's Slade Wilson in the...
Oh, yeah, Suicide Squad.
No, not Suicide Squad. He's Slade Wilson, but it's the Zack Snyder ones. But it's literally like an after-credit scene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was excited for it.
The last actor worth mentioning, Connor, again, a very minor role, is played by Jack Quaid. He's popping up in a lot of things now, so parents, you might recognize him as Huey from The Boys, which absolutely do not watch that with your children anywhere near the TV.
Yeah, it's too grown up. The director of this movie is Brad Payton, who directed Cats and Dogs, Revenge of Kitty Galore, which does have an amazing cast in it. So this movie has James Marsden, Nick Nolte, Christina Applegate, Cat Williams, Bette Midler, Neil Patrick Harris, Sean Hayes, Wallace Shawn, who's the voice of Rex from Toy Story.
Yeah.
Joe Pantoliano, I can't remember.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Yep. Michael Clark Duncan, Chris O'Donnell, Jack McBrayer. Like, stop me when you don't know.
When you don't recognize the name.
So maybe not the greatest cast in the world. Like, they're kind of part two.
But they're all recognizable.
Yeah, all recognizable people.
All
So
right, maybe we'll check that out.
I thought that was pretty cool. He also directed Journey to the Mysterious Island, which was the one with Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah,
as
Journey
well.
to the Center of the Earth, right? Was the first one?
Yes, that was the first one. And then he directed San Andreas with Dwayne
Also
Johnson
The Rock.
as well. And then he directed Atlas, which is the new one with Simu Liu and what's her name? Jennifer Lopez on Netflix.
Okay.
So yeah.
So he likes action.
He does. So first impressions of this movie, Mommy, it came out April of 2018. We were together, so I can
Yes.
answer one of these. We did not see it in theaters.
No, I was like 8 months pregnant when this movie came out.
But how old were you the first time we watched it, and do you remember liking it?
So I was 26 when this movie came out. Like I said, heavily pregnant with Amelia, making her debut May 2018. We watched it at home, I
Yeah.
believe. It was on Vudu or something like that.
Yeah.
I liked it. It seems like a summer blockbuster-esque type film, even though it came out in April. It had those
Definitely.
vibes of like, there's explosions, there's destruction. It was very like, it had Michael Bay aspects to it where you're like,
I can
all
see
right,
that.
this is cool.
I can see that for sure.
It's just a fun movie to put on and watch.
Yeah.
Did you like it the first time we watched it?
I was 27 the first time we watched it, and yeah, I liked it. I'll say it, I'm a Dwayne Johnson fan.
I know you love The Rock.
I have his Funko Pops, I have t-shirts, so I mean, like, I'm a Dwayne Johnson fan. I like him very much. Does he make some stinker movies? We'll get into that later on, but yeah, I like him.
His movies, I wouldn't call them stinkers. They're not up for Oscars, man. Like, we're not going for that at all. But are they entertaining? Do they have usually a nice message to it or theme?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then was this the first time watch for the girls?
Yes, this is the first time that both of them have seen this movie.
I believe they picked it. Yes, Zosha picked this one. I showed them the trailers, and Zosha picked this one, and Amelia picked Charlie's Angels. So eventually we will cover Charlie's Angels.
What a throwback. All right, Zosha, do we have a title drop?
Yes, Claire says Project Rampage.
Down 20%.
And you aren't upset because...
Because Project Rampage works.
She does. It is their serum, if you will, that their company makes.
Yeah.
So, but plain and simple. But she's the first one to say it.
It was nice to see that they had the title in there.
Amelia, anything for the cat cam?
No, but there was another animals.
Yeah, we had the main animals, right? We got a gorilla, a crocodile, and what was the other one?
A wolf.
Yeah, real big one at that.
So, Mommy, I mentioned earlier that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I'm a big fan of him. I feel like he's got this bad reputation of just always being in bad movies. And it's mostly popcorn movies. And I think that you had mentioned, like, they're just always fun. They're just something, explosions.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them outright bad. They're just not elegant films.
But he's always looked at as a bad actor. And honestly, I mean, he's not a great actor. In something like The Game Plan, like, he gets the point across.
Yeah.
But something like San Andreas, where he has to emit a little bit more emotion, or, Central Intelligence, for the most part, he's a Ryan Reynolds in a way where he plays the same character every time. He's always just like the big brute dude who might have a moment of
Having some heart.
Yeah, having some heart. But for the most part, he's looked at that way. How do you feel like he did in this movie?
I think this movie was a little bit better. Like, he definitely, I feel like that's become a theme too. He started off with that like ladies' man personality to him as well versus his more recent movies like Central Intelligence. I feel like he's the same way. They don't really flaunt that, and they call him out in this movie. Like,
listen, buddy, since everyone else is afraid to tell you this, of course I will. It's what's the terminology? Weird. You like hanging out with animals more than people.
They get me. Animals like you, they lick you. They don't like you, they eat you. So you always know where you stand.
Or where you lie, all chewed up in their belly because they ate you. Yeah, that's just some food for thought. And by the way, you're the food. All right, get out of here, you big lug. Say hi to the dogs for me.
I will.
so I liked that aspect of it better in this movie, that he's more of an introvert despite his body being heavily extrovert appearing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he was good in this movie. Nothing spectacular, but just getting enough. In a way, if you took all of his movies and put his characters together, it would be the same person, I think. So I get what people are saying, like how he's kind of been typecasted as this.
Even some of his outfits, I feel like, would be hard to differentiate.
Yeah, I think he wears like the same white t-shirt.
Or he's got like the cargo like he does for Jumanji,
Yeah.
and some of it that he wears in like other film like Journey to the Center of the Earth and stuff like
San
that.
Andreas, and yeah.
For the longest time, I remember all the time, I still ask you this question, which one's Walking Tall and which one's
The Rundown?
The Rundown.
Okay.
Yeah. All those movies are like the same in my mind until I sit down and go, oh, one of them's Sean Williams.
Yeah, one of them's way different. One of them's Sean William Scott, one of them is Johnny Knoxville.
Yeah,
So,
but they have been in a movie together too, so it's like they're basically the same comedic relief. So I'm always like, which one's which?
yeah. So this movie is based loosely,
Very loosely.
off of a game. Did you ever play the game?
Nope.
You never played the game? Okay, I remember playing it on I think it was Super Nintendo. One of my cousin Artie had it, and we'd play it. And there's really, I know when we were just watching some videos after we watched this movie with the girls, it kind of reminded me of Fix It Felix. Like the Disney
Very
movie.
much so.
It was just, hey, just like Ralph would just annihilate these buildings, it was just
These animals
annihilate the buildings and eating the food and the grapes and whatever's in the buildings, they would eat them and get points. But it was just, the point of it was to
destroy.
Yeah.
Which I appreciated. I like that it was like a early version of a rage room for people. Like, hey, you having a bad day? Come destroy the city.
But I thought this movie did a pretty decent job. It kind of reminded me of the Battleship movie in a way, where the movie Battleship is very loosely, like, adding aliens to it was just crazy, but I was like, okay, I'm entertained. This works. And it was the same thing I felt for this movie, where yes, we get to see these animals and they do wreck some buildings, but we had this added story of this friendship between these two characters that make you feel for this one particular animal that's wrecking these buildings. Like, it's got an element of surprise to it.
Yeah, for being something that is completely over dramatized, it came out a pretty decent product.
Yeah.
So some favorite scenes, I'll start with one of the girls. Amelia really likes when George does his dark humored jokes and gives Davis the finger. Like, she loves it. She's like, it's so funny. She loves that they communicate through sign language. Like, it was amazing for her to see that, because like, you hear about it. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, like, this is obviously not, this is a person playing George. Yeah. But this is a real thing. Like, if you look up videos, like, you can teach primate sign language and communicate with each other. And she just thought that was so cool. And that, George was funny and that he cracked jokes. And him and Davis were like, they're just buddies,
they're little chums.
Yeah, it's wholesome. And then she liked George hovering over Connor and scaring him, like playing the scared prank on him. She's like, it was so funny because he wasn't actually going to hurt him.
That is a funny scene. I like when Davis looks at him and he's like, you made him cry.
George! Easy, buddy. Easy. Okay. Oh, very funny. It's very funny. We're all very impressed. Yes. You and I laughing at your joke, okay? New guy, he no laugh. He cry. Yeah. Opposite of laugh. Connor, you can get up now.
Are you 100% on that?
100% sure, you can get up.
And check your diaper. Come on. Let's go.
It gives George a personality that you love.
Yes.
I'll jump into one of my favorite scenes now. Just the hunting of the wolf. I think the wolf's name is Ralph or Ralphie. There is a name.
I didn't know it had a name.
Yes, and I think they mention it one time.
Okay,
but it's like Ralph or Ralphie. But when Joe Manganiello's character is
Burke.
in the woods, when he's looking for this wolf, you're thinking, oh, it's going to be a smaller wolf. He's thinking it's a smaller wolf. We know this wolf has gotten bigger. But I think that scene was pretty cool. Just kind of gave an intense, like, horror feel to it, and I like horror, so I was all for it.
It did. It gave me like Village vibes when you just see it through the trees.
Yeah,
and it's just gigantic. Yeah. It made me think of The Village.
And then like the drool falls onto his, like, it's a classic thing of like, oh man, it's above me.
It's like a Jurassic Park type thing, you know.
It's cool.
That was a good scene. I liked. It's a very small thing, but I thought it brought more realism, if you will, to the role. And it's when Okoye and Naomi, oh no, that's not her name, Kate in the movie, they're going to find a helicopter so that they can leave, to go hunt down George and help him out, whatever. And they find a medical helicopter and they get in there and they're going to take off, and Davis keeps starting it up because it is revealed that he used to be in the military, and that's why he's the way he is, like super buff and all this crazy stuff. But regardless, he gets in this helicopter and it keeps like stuttering, or he does the wrong button. He's like, oh.
I assume you know how to fly this thing?
Absolutely. It's coming back to me. It's all coming back. Right now. And it's coming back. It's coming back.
Yeah, he used to do this, but it was a long time ago. He's like, I'm not that awesome that I just plop into a helicopter. And he's like, oh yeah, I got this. Like, for someone who looks like such a tough guy, I liked that real aspect of, sometimes you got to jog your memory a little bit, okay?
That is cool to have that real aspect, because there's a lot of movies where people just know how to fly a helicopter, and like, even just me watching what he was doing, because he does get into like a fighter jet towards the end to use that, just to use the weapons on it. But even that, I'd be like, I have no idea how to start the weapons on anything. Or
There's
how to,
so many buttons on there.
I feel like most people think they could probably fly a plane because it's just, oh, pull back. Now you're in the air. Like, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing.
No, and then the other thing too is there's a difference between when you have like an autopilot or power steering and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the moment you're in a crash landing and you are actually controlling the plane, two extremely different things, man. Like, I wouldn't have the confidence to say, yeah, I'm going to land this plane.
Absolutely not. No way.
But you better hope there's water underneath us, guys.
Even if there's water, I'm not pulling a Sully. No way.
Zosha had told me that her favorite scene is when Davis and George team up towards the end and they fight the big crocodile.
All right, George, we got to stop these things before they destroy the city. That's right. Let's kick some ass.
So the fighter jet thing that I just brought.
Yeah, that whole scene she really liked because it's after they get George back to normal. I'm not going to explain all that. You'll see it in the movie.
Yeah.
But they get George back to normal, but he's still gigantic. It's not going to do anything about his size, but at least his personality went back to normal.
Yeah.
So him and Davis are back to their old chummy buddy cop relationship, and they're like, all right, what are we going to do about this crocodile? Because he is just literally destroying Chicago right now.
Yeah. It is a cool scene. Very, very action-packed, which I'm shocked that she liked that scene because Zosha's not our action kid.
She is not. She doesn't like violence, but she liked that they were taking out the bad guy and saving the day. She does like a good hero.
She does. So you just mentioned Chicago. I'm going to go into one of my positives right now.
Yeah.
This is a Chicago movie.
100%. It is really cool to just see our city. Like, I love when you're watching a movie and you can go, hey, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've literally driven down that street. I have stood in that spot. Like, it's really cool. I happen to just been there, too.
We get to feel a little bit of what, like, California and New York feels, because everything is filmed in California and New York. Yeah. So when we get to watch something that has Chicago in it, we're like, oh, man, this is great. Because we're mostly known for, like, Home Alone and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Pretty much anything John Hughes at this point.
Yeah, true Chicagoans know Batman. You can look at the streets and the highways and know that's Chicago.
Yeah, when he talks about Lower Wacker, you're like, oh man, I know that. I've driven on that.
But you're like, yeah, I guess if you had to pick a mythical city to be compared to Chicago, Gotham's pretty close.
Unfortunately.
Yes. Gotham's not far off, depending on the time of day. So I mentioned it a little bit earlier how Amelia liked the sign language in it, and I think that's a big positive of this movie is that there is quite a bit of sign language, and subtitles aren't used, which sounds weird because you would think, well, how do I know what they're saying? And this is something that The Rock does a great job with. He answers in full sentences. He's like,
What happened? You're sad. It's okay. Did you hurt him? Sorry. It's okay. Did he hurt you? Made you scared? It's okay.
and you had mentioned the scene where he's like, I wasn't crying, like at the end and things like that. Like he talks out loud while he's talking to George, and part of it, and it might seem odd to do, but when they're working at that zoological society, like where he's at, and there's other people in there with him, you know, you're talking out loud because it's almost like a teaching experience. So like not everybody there knows sign language. So it's good that everybody else can know that what conversation that he's having with George.
And the reason why you're bringing this up is like the positive of it is that kids or audiences don't know sign language. So you're also getting what he's saying. Like it's a teaching moment for you as well. And you don't feel dumb when you're watching something like this because you know exactly what they're saying to each other. Yeah,
it makes a movie a little bit more inclusive because obviously there are people out there that use American Sign Language. So I'm sure it's super excited when you see it used on film. You know, everybody loves to see a little bit of themselves on the big screen. And even if it is with George, whatever, they're using it. It interested Amelia because she's like, we've watched sign language videos at school. Like, I want to learn how to do that. And it's like, you know, I love that. That makes my heart happy that you, because she brought up when we go on vacations, like, oh, it's like what they do in the theater.
Yes.
When they have the American Sign Language people off to the side. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what they're doing. And she's like, I want to do that. And it's just such a noble thing for a little thing. I love it.
Something that I read about this movie is that when Dwayne Johnson does, he says something to George like, it's me, Davis. But
You know me.
But when he sign languages to him, he says, it's me, The Rock. He
Yeah.
does like The Rock sign language sign or whatever it is. I was like, oh man, okay, I see what you did there.
I like that. So that's good. That's another thing that's like inclusive for audiences to be like, hey, he said more than just that.
Yep.
And we, as people who don't know ASL, we missed that little Easter egg without looking it up.
I liked it. The last positive I have is something we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, is that this is just a popcorn flick. A term that's for movies that are used that you just turn your brain off and grab some popcorn and just be entertained. And sometimes it's just nice. I have a Letterboxd account where I like to rank movies and sometimes leave reviews. Sometimes I'm really critical and sometimes I just want to kick back and have fun. This is one of those movies that, you'll find out what my thumb rating is later on. Maybe there's something in the negatives that will bring this way down. But sometimes you just want to turn the brain off and you just want to be entertained.
Yeah, you want to be entertained. You don't want to be depressed. Like, there's a time and place for certain movies. Like, we're not everybody wants to sit down and watch Schindler's List, all right? Like, we're just not wanting that vibe. Or you don't want to watch some of those Oscar movies that are going to make you think and contemplate life, or Interstellar sending you into a complete mindless spin of what is time. Like, no, I just want to see a monkey fight a crocodile, and I want to see The Rock do some sign language and at the end go, good for them. Like, that's what we need sometimes.
Absolutely. And that's definitely a positive because most of us have kids. And if you're listening to this, you probably have a kid or a younger sibling or a niece or nephew. And you're like, hey, you just want to watch a movie that is entertaining. This is it.
I think enough during the day. Yeah. Sometimes I have nothing left in me. Okay.
That's right.
The last part of our positive section is the message. In life, there are just some irredeemable people in the world, like we saw with the Widens, but it is also very important to distinguish between people or creatures that are wholly bad versus acting bad because of something happening. George was poisoned with a substance that altered him completely, but Davis recognized that this destruction isn't truly George's fault. To relate this to maybe another movie, it's like in terms of Aladdin. He is stealing food and such, but it's because he's a hungry grown-up orphan. What he's doing is wrong, but it doesn't make him a bad person. And it's just like at his root, George isn't bad, despite the fact that he is leveling cities. That's not his personality. Something else took over George.
It's like I always say about Batman as well. I got to bring up Batman.
And we're back. Second time this episode. I brought it up the first time, though, so.
I always got to bring up Batman because, yes, Batman is hurting people. He is breaking into places. He's breaking out. He's
breaking the law.
He's breaking the law, but he's doing it for good reasons.
Yes.
So, for that reason, Batman's great.
Yes, it's knowing the difference between a truly bad person and a person doing bad things to get a good outcome.
Yeah. While we're talking about something that might be negative, let's get into our negatives.
Yes.
Biosonar communications. Regenerate. These are words that are going to go over your kids' heads because I don't even know what biosonar communication is in my head. So
bats. Bio means life, like biology. It is the study of life. So it is life sonar communication. So when everybody's going to get a nice little lesson here, which sometimes you don't want to have a lesson when you're watching a movie, which is why this might be a negative thing. But yeah, they have that beacon that calls them, and that's their biosonar communication. And it's like the way bats communicate, where they send out the sound and it bounces back off of it.
Okay.
Well, that sound is radiating, and they're like, I need to get to that sound.
Gotcha.
But again, some people don't know how bats talk. Some people don't know.
They don't. And kids definitely don't know it. Like, regenerate. That's something that is like, kids will be like, what?
And then we have to be like Deadpool. Oh, okay. Like
some kids don't know what Deadpool is. So,
yeah.
Yes.
But for our kids, like.
Some of the science, outside of those words, there is more science jargon in this movie that you're like, you either have to explain it to your kids, or you just have to let them go with it.
Yeah, you just brush over it. Like when Dr. Caldwell, when Kate's explaining all the stuff that happened in the lab and how we made Project Rampage, like all that part, you're just like,
Definitely goes over the heads.
You're like, serum equal angry animal. Done. Okay.
And then, like I said earlier, this is a popcorn flick. While that is great, there is no real substance or anything memorable about this movie. We said we saw this around when it first came out, but we might as well have been watching it for the very first time over this past weekend. There's just nothing that sticks in your mind of this was great. So, very forgetful movie.
Yeah, so it's good. It's a positive in the fact that you can turn your brain off and watch this movie and, like we said, enjoy a popcorn flick. But it's negative because, I watched it and it was immediately dumpster fired in my brain. Like, I'm like, that's it. That's it. It is there to serve its purpose and nothing more.
True.
Outside of it being completely unmemorable, it's just not plausible. I know we cover things like Peter Pan and Enchanted, and like obviously those things aren't going to happen in real life, but this story is just super far-fetched. I feel like it would have never gotten that far either. The government would have taken out these creatures in whatever way possible the moment civilians were killed. And I feel like they just let this go way too long, to the point where some of them made it from California to Chicago or wherever they were in the United States. Like, it's just wild to me.
I think that this one is kind of harder because George is someone that didn't hurt anybody, and they tranked him, and then they do fly him halfway to Chicago.
They help him with part of his journey.
So yeah, I could see why they weren't trying to take him out. The wolf, I don't know if people knew about the wolf until it got halfway to Chicago at that point. We'll leave the reason why they're going to Chicago for you guys to watch, but they're on their way to Chicago.
Yeah, but the bigger thing is, so at first the Widens just send their own like private military, which is Joe Burke's character and everything. So at first, the wolf is just in the forest. He's not at civilization yet, but he does cut through civilization on the way to Chicago. And it's like the moment the military knew that there was a wolf too, it's not like they're like, let's just wait for it to get to one of the most populated cities in the world. It'll be fine. Yeah. Let's not evacuate the city. Like, the decisions in this movie are not realistic. Like, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of flaws within our government, but
it's hard to tell how fast it goes too, because from the time that George gets bigger to the time, because I think it only goes one night. It goes one night because that's when he's taking the helicopter. So I think this movie only takes place over maybe 12 to 16 hours.
I think it's more than that. I think it's with it. I think
only see one night.
I don't know.
It happens to George in the morning where he gets bigger, and then we see the night where the helicopter happens, and then the next day. So maybe it was noon the next day, so maybe 16 hours.
I think it's 2 days because it happens to him at night, and then they find him in the morning. Yeah, I guess they do eventually take him. I don't know. It's within 2 days for sure.
So maybe the military was like, I don't even know what the heck's going on here. We don't know what to do. We don't have a plan for giant wolves.
No, but the fact that they would say that the United States government was like, nah, you know what? Let's not evacuate the city. There's no way. Again, like I just said, there's a lot of flaws in our government, but we're not in the business of putting real innocent American lives at stake, especially when there's a city filled with children, mind you. Like, they would have been like, everybody got to get out of here now.
I see both sides of this. But to your point, plausibility.
Yes. And I feel like there would have been more mass hysteria throughout the entire nation. Like, because news channels are like, hey, check out this gigantic gorilla that just fell from the sky in a plane and all this wolf coming. Like, I don't know.
That's true, too. But if I would have heard that, I'd be like, no way. I don't even know if I would have believed it.
Listen, at this point in life, I'd be like, that sounds right. That checks out.
We get all of our information from Facebook and TikTok, so we don't watch the news or listen to radio, so we wouldn't have even known about it.
But regardless, I would have. You wouldn't have. But at this point in our lives, the amount of crazy once-in-a-lifetime things that we have been through, and we're only in our 30s. I mean, if they were like, oh, we got giant gorillas now, I'd be like, and the aliens are coming next. Like, it's going to happen. What do you got?
Yeah.
What do you got next, life?
The last negative that I have is that it starts off pretty scary. It's in space with a giant lab rat, and so if your littles can't make it through that opening scene, they might have a hard time with the rest of the movie. However, I do think that the scariest part in this movie is that opening scene. I don't know if you would agree with that.
It is. Okay, it is. And I will talk about it in parental guidance right now when we get to scary. So just to roll right into that, language is moderate. There are no F-bombs spoken, but the finger gesture is used a few times. Like I said, Amelia loves it. And then there's a sprinkling of the rest of the usual swear words throughout.
I feel like the finger gesture is not used in a negative way. I know it's a negative gesture, but it's like a friendly...
Yeah, it's a joking.
We've had this talk with our girls that you could
say that phrase and it's more like, stop it,
Yeah.
And it's not actually like the mean way.
Yes.
Fun conversations you never thought you'd have.
Nope.
You never thought you'd have to explain to someone, but there is a difference. Violence, absolutely. This movie is called Rampage. These animals are destroying everything in their paths, including people. A woman gets swallowed whole by George, which even that I was like, dang. A man gets crushed by building debris, and it's pretty graphic. It's got a major blood spurt. Yeah. Like, you cringe a little bit when you see it.
Ooh, yeah, you do one of those.
Yeah, like, ooh. There's weapon violence with the military personnel trying to stop this wolf, George, and the crocodile. Buildings are collapsing left and right, and the destruction is just unfathomable of how many innocent civilians were lost. Like, they just brush over that fact for this movie, but, like, the toll has got to be pretty high.
We don't see the aftermath.
No, but it's still something that they're like, we're just going to brush over the fact that, yeah, probably a lot of people went down with this building.
It's not as bad as Metropolis and Man of Steel.
Oh, yeah, like 100%. They hurt people.
Yeah.
Scary, like Daddy had just said. The scene with the first Project Rampage animal of the rat is terrifying. It's suspenseful. We see bodies and limbs floating around the space station, and then finally the rat itself, and it's just ravenous and clawing and trying to break through a window. Like, it's scary.
Yeah, there's like strobe lights, and it's dark for most of it.
Because it's failing. The power's failing.
Yeah, so I think that's what makes it scarier versus everything with like the wolf and the crocodile all happens during the day, so I think it makes it a little easier for kids.
Yeah, it's just, you could tell that like this is a bad situation and there's no escape because you're in space. Like, what are you going to do? But overall, the gore and the animals are going to scare the little ones. Like, there's no doubt. Grown-up stuff? Not much, honestly. There's an inappropriate sexual hand gesture, but it's all in a joking manner. I wouldn't say it's anything crazy. Kate talks about the loss of her brother and getting framed by the Widens, which landed her in jail. These are things that just kids may not be able to understand or relate to. Like, it's very much an adult problem. Cry factor, Amelia did cry when it appeared that a character had passed away, and I'll leave it at that. Because if you watch this movie, I don't want to ruin it.
It was sad.
It was, but she like cried even after,
Yeah.
and we were like, it's okay.
It was already into the credits, and yeah.
And we were still a little upset about it.
As for an age recommendation, you know your kids better than we do. We're just here to give our opinions. So we've talked about Dwayne Johnson this entire episode, and he's definitely going to help with this recommendation. I can't recall a movie that he's made where it is straight up not for kids. The movie has action, it has friendship, it has a good guy, it has bad guys. Like we said before, it's a popcorn flick. And kids can really enjoy popcorn flicks as well. I think Amelia was into this movie. We're going to find out in a moment. But to be safe, I think 8 and up would be a fine age to show your kids this one. So Rotten Tomato critics have this movie at a 51%, which would be a thumbs middle. Audiences have it at a 72, which is still a thumbs middle. Let's see how it holds up in our house. Zosha, do you give Rampage a thumbs up, a thumbs middle, or a thumbs down?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up? Why thumbs up?
Because I like the story.
You like the story. Amelia, what do you give this movie?
Thumbs middle.
Why a thumbs middle?
Because it was a tiny bit like boring for me, but I liked it.
Okay, cool. Mommy, what are you giving this movie?
I'd say that's fair. Some of the science jargon might bring the kids down.
Yeah, one of the negatives I said.
I'm going to give this movie a thumbs middle because this is probably the third time I'm saying it. It's not a great movie by any means, but it is entertaining. It's something you can throw on, shut your mind off for a little while, and still be like, all right, that was nice.
Yeah.
And then you could do it again in a couple years because you won't remember it. So I'd say that makes it a good, evenly rated movie. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's not like I'd say I'd never watch this movie again. I probably will, just a couple years from now. What about you, Daddy?
I think that's where I'm going to agree with. I'm going to go thumbs middle because, yeah, it does have its moments. Like I'd said earlier, it's very unmemorable. It's very forgetful. But it's a popcorn flick, and who doesn't like to just toss on something every once in a while that they don't have to think for? I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I watch horror, so for the most part, it's a popcorn flick for me because it's just something that I could turn my brain off for, and it's great.
It's got those typical tropes that you know you're going to expect, and you can call it a day. And that's, sometimes you just want to watch a rock movie.
Exactly. And if any of you would like to add Rampage to your movie night list, it is currently streaming on Prime Video or available across platforms.
And after watching, let us know if you give it thumbs up, thumbs middle, or thumbs down.
And when you want to let us know what you think about the movie, please find us on social media. We like to post pictures of us on our movie nights, letting you know what snacks and sweets we're eating. It's a fun place to hang out.
Our Facebook is It's Movie Night, and our Instagram is It's Movie Night Pod. Thank you for listening. Join us next week for another movie night. Bye.